welcome to the podcast Open Minded. Today's topic is going to be about industrial disasters. Ever since the last video that we made, we've been talking about different disasters that has happened.
One of the disasters that I was recently interested into, because also I heard about it at school, was the Flint Michigan Water Crisis. And then basically how the crisis started was because the city of Flint started to change its water source from Lake Huron and Detroit River to the Flint River. And also they had already old lead pipes that didn't really have well made lining. Then they also caused some of the old lead to go in the drinking water that people use. So their tap water would come out brown, and it was very toxic to humans also. And a lot of people were going bald. A lot of kids started going bald.
So they're losing their hair.
Yeah, they started getting like little bumps across their skin.
Well, lead it's highly toxic, and especially to infants and younger children, because they could absorb a higher concentration of lead than adult humans. So
yeah, and I also heard like when babies are developing, they're absorbing all the nutrients that their mother gets, and if their mother drinks that lead-filled water, the lead tricks the body into thinking it's calcium, and then the lead starts going into their bones and stuff too.
So it causes like a degeneration of the bones. And why not?
Yeah.
It also it messes with their brain development, their cognition. So their brain wouldn't develop the same way it would. I think I've heard some cases where some children were born with autism and other cognitive disabilities. So
yeah, they also had they're comparing them to brain scans of other kids, and they saw that it was like much smaller. And also they would scan their bones, and they also saw that it had a lot of lead also inside their bones.
Because I've also heard that it wasn't really necessary, right? Because it was like they didn't really prepare well to switch from their from the previous water plant to the brand new water plant they switched to.
Oh, I think they probably just switched to the Flint River, because it's also closer, because it's right in the city of Flint, Michigan. So most likely saved them a lot of money, because they also had to buy the water from Lake Huron and the Detroit River.
And so it's just basically a shorter and more, let's say, like efficient way of providing water to their citizens.
But how exactly did the lead begin to leak into their water?
Well, basically, there's always like the pipes themselves are made out of lead, and they also put like another lead lining, but it's also like mixed with other stuff. So basically that the lead lining blocks the lead from the pipes from going into the water.
Because I also heard there was more issues like involving money, because since it was lead that was involved, the people, for example, that didn't have those pipes that were made from lead, or that had a smaller concentration of lead, they didn't. Their pipes were contaminated because the water was just constantly flowing through their pipes. So they had to. The issue with that, it was that like they'd had to replace all the pipes, and that would mean that they'd have to replace the pipes from the city too. So I don't know exactly how they resolved the problem. I heard that they were also using more chlorine. They were dumping more chlorine into their water.
Yeah, and that also, chlorine is corrosive. So it from what I read up on it is that basically it sort of breaks down the lead lining. So doesn't have doesn't have any lining that prevents the lead from the actual pipes going into the tap water or the water they use to shower.
Mm-hmm. So they just basically it started dissolving it since there was a higher concentration of it. It like dissolved the lining that would prevent the lead from actually going through, right?
Yeah. Then there's a lot of parents that started complaining and saying that their kids are starting to lose hair, and they also started seeing like a lot of splotches under skin, and basically they're ignoring the complaining parents until like there's like started getting attention from like different scientists. I know there's some scientists also from Virginia Tech that were looking into this, and yeah, the first couple of tries, the city was like sort of ignoring the complaining parents until like there are scientists that were getting involved, and they're actually able to provide evidence since they're more accredited, and that's when the city started trying to change stuff. And I heard they went back to their original water source also.
Well, I also heard that I don't know if it was the mayor of Flint that who recommended this, but they recommended boiling the water, and apparently that makes the lead more reactive. So the amount of dangers that the water posed on the people were a lot higher.
Yeah.
So it's like they had like little makeshift like fixes that actually didn't help them at all. They actually caused more problems.
Yeah. Well, one in that case, yeah, heating up the lead. I remember them saying that it made it more reactive, so it was more dangerous for the people.
Yeah, because they always like heavy metals. It's always a bad thing to have in your body.
Yeah.
And especially lead. There's been plenty of studies that like lead, like alters like kids' minds or even adults, and then it causes other problems too in your body.
Yeah.
Not just in your brain.
Well,
one of the most common diseases that they saw that the residents of Flint had was the Legionnaire's disease, and basically like a severe form of pneumonia. So all that lead would cause like respiratory problems also.
One also, well, I've seen articles where they've pointed out lead as the main source of infant death because it was also well, nowadays there's less toys built with lead with a lead coating or just lead installed into the toys, and yeah, that was a big issue. And you also have the installation in houses. I don't know if it was in paint or just in building the wall. Yeah, I don't know if it was like in the insulation or something, but yeah, in houses, I think it was built before 1970s.
Yeah, I think I don't remember the proper name of it, but I think it's arsenic, right?
Arsenic.
No, or that might be something else. But yeah, like that's why we changed to like fiberglass or foam insulation.
Like, cause it's a asbestos that's in the
Asbestos. Yeah, there we go.
insulin in the insulation of the houses, but
Hmm.
it's I think it was lead that's found in the coating of houses. And I think
Hmm.
in the paint coating. So like old houses, for example, um, yeah, I think they said it was before the 1970s.
Hmm.
Well, by that time the paint it's probably already peeling off. So
And then if you see by law, a lot of businesses, a lot of older businesses, are they're required to put it on their building that it might affect pregnant women. I think even in this building we have that too, where you could just see it on like on the corner when you come in. You can see that this I don't know, this house may contain like lead, like building material or blah blah blah, that would affect pregnant women or other people.
Yeah. Also, what you said about the buildings and the warning signs. They found that a lot of pregnant women were also getting cancer, and then their kids were also getting cancer too.
Hmm. So it wasn't just them; it was affecting their kids too.
Yeah, cause like I mean, like when children are developing, they get all their nutrients from their parents. So
Hmm.
then also, if their parents have lead poisoning, that could also go to your child too. Sometimes children even have it worse also.
Hmm. Because like yeah, at least when they're developing, like if you have something or you have something wrong with you, of course it'll transfer to them because they're basically copying everything that you are. So yeah, like, and since they're just developing, way it's way more toxic to them too, because of course they don't have a well formed like defense system or immune system. So yeah.
So you want to talk about?
well, I don't know. Well, I've never really heard about it. Many people talking about the Bhopal pesticide disaster that occurred in India, where there's this company called Union Carbide, which is an American company, and yeah, they transferred some operations. They built a factory out in the Bhopal, India, and they began to they began to manufacture pesticides because I mean since it's in India, uh, all those countries, all those other countries nearby India, there's it's a higher population of like vector-borne diseases like insects with like for example insects like mosquitoes. It's more common over there in those countries, and so what happened is that there's this chemical called MIC, or you might also know it as methyl isocyanate, which is very reactive with water. And the problem is that when this was happening, it was in a night shift. So there was a worker began to notice that the temperature began to rise, and the issue is that if MIC begins to mix with water, it becomes very highly reactive. So what happened is that the MIC began to leak out from the tank, and it it began to react with water that was outside, maybe from moisture or humidity, and yeah, well, once it began to react, it began to form a gas, and that gas leaked out from one of the vents. So it began to the gas. Well, if it flew outside, and it began to spread over the city. So out of nowhere, you saw people in the streets. They began to their eyes were their eyes would get very watery, and they began to spit out like a bunch of mucus from their mouth, and it was probably because, well, it affected their lungs since it's a gas. They inhaled it, so it went into their lungs and it affected their eyes. So they were saying that it was around maybe like eight up to like 16,000 people that died in that amount of time. It was like around 8,000 or more that died just in 3 days. And the thing is that the company, they basically, well, they only filed a settlement for 470 million, and each worker who was affected, or each other person that was affected, they only received like around 700 pounds. And the thing is that there was many people, like many mothers that had miscarriages, and the few people who survived, they had a serious respiratory issues. So yeah, it was a pretty serious effect. And after the whole situation calmed down and the toxicity went down, the CEO, I think his name was Warren Anderson. He well, he had to face the law. So after being sentenced, the owners of the company, they paid off his bail. So he right after they paid his bail, he just flew back to the U.S. and nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like the amount of people who got affected, and there was many children who were born with autism and cognitive and physical disorders. Some were already born with respiratory issues. So
yeah, from what I'm saying, like well, the people seemed very angry, and they will make like like big protests, and they had like a statue of Warren Anderson as like a devil, and they'll burn him.
Yeah, because, well, just in 3 days, killing 8,000 people, and what they're doing in the hospitals, since hospitals were getting very saturated with people, the medical workers, they began to just get pieces of wood, and they would write the date, and if they knew the name of the person, well, they'd write it down, and they would just take pictures of them, and those pictures were later on used to put more pressure on the Indian government, and
just to like help them out, like to see like what's actually happening. Because like if you don't see the effects, or if you try turning a blind eye, and then like it gets worse and worse, like of course you have to go reach out like to the government, or actually make somebody see the actual problems in there, because they're not seeing it. So yeah, like, and then if you see it, like, yeah, pesticides are made to kill bugs. But in, like, let's say in a large amount, like, or a certain amount, it will affect people, and depending on what chemical it is too. And then yeah, I'm pretty sure they're still feeling that, like they're still feeling like what happened too, or maybe kids are still coming out like being born differently, or with problems.
And also like just to like show like how toxic pesticides are, like my parents have told me like some stories of like people that have like, after they come home from working in the fields, that since field workers are usually working with pesticides, like some of them are a little bit lazy and don't want to wash their hands, and those pesticides are still in their hands, and once they eat, the pesticides go into their body, and my parents tell me like they get like super sick, like they start throwing up, like it nearly kills them just by like ingesting a small amount.
Well,
Imagine this is like
it was in their water.
Yeah, it was in their water, and
it's like also
it was in there.
Also, well, with this, since it's in another country, there's not many regulations. Who knows exactly how the regulations are, because at the same time they're providing employment to people in their country. So there probably could have been a settlement, or the Indian government could have probably decreased the amount of regulations. So because I heard that all they knew, the people who were in charge of regulating the temperature, they only knew that if the temperature would rise over a certain amount, they'd had to inform the main supervisor. But like that's all they knew.
So they weren't trained properly to troubleshoot like problems that they would run into. So it's probably lack of training too, and it's just them not having, like, the company not having actual policies that would prevent something like this to like happening. And yeah, like, and then if you see, like, it affected a lot of people.
Yeah, and also children. And the thing is that there was this doctor, I don't remember exactly her name, but she would warn the local government about this, and he didn't pay much attention. He was just, well, since it was beneficial economically to their city, well, they agreed with continuing operations, but she would constantly warn them, and well, nothing was done until the incident actually happened, when they informed her and they asked her for her help. But once they asked her for her help, the amount of exposure and just the amount of time people were getting exposed, it was just it was too late. So
and I think, like, if you see a lot of people, like, how they take stuff is, like, since it's not affecting me right now, I'm not like, since it's not affecting me right now, it's not happening. And then until it starts affecting, and that's when, like, a lot of people, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, I should have paid attention, like, right off the bat. But the majority of them don't until it directly affects them. And yeah, like, if you see with the government is like, oh well, like, this company is providing employment for, like, my people. So, like, if I just turn a blind eye, like, it won't matter. I'm like, it's nothing big. But then, of course, you have, like, people pressuring them to, like, to do something about it. And of course, if they don't do anything, like, there's gonna be walkouts, or not walkouts, but there's gonna be riots, or if not, like, peaceful protests. I don't know what exactly they did in this situation, but yeah, it is affecting them. So
yeah, and the thing is that there was also lack of information, because most likely if the workers knew about this, they probably would have been many workers who would have not continued, or they would have filed complaints. Because I also saw a video of a family, and it was a husband and the wife and a child. And the wife, well, the husband came home and he informed his wife that a worker died, but before that, he was admitted to a hospital because he had a serious issue. He was getting serious complications once he was exposed to the pesticide, to the chemical MIC, and he was admitted to the hospital, and like a day after he passed away. And she was begging him to quit because it was very dangerous. And yeah, he never ended up quitting. So
And yeah, I think this concludes the episode of this podcast. Thank you for watching, and bye.